So that exercise that you guys just did on your own, you're going to keep it to yourselves unless you want to talk about it with somebody else later on. That can be fairly superficial. It's, you know, you go as deep as you want to. There's just some pretty superficial questions there. You can make it a little bit deeper by asking yourself other questions, like what are the common themes if you come up with more high points in your career or more low points, and so what are the themes with the high points, what are the themes with the low points, what's the balance between the high and low points, and looking at what are the realities of my practice as compared to what my goal was when why did I become an OT, and is the reality of my practice actually matching that? So you can take it a little bit deeper. And so that's an example of doing a reflective exercise on your own with no feedback. So we've done some observation there. You're doing a little bit of reflection, and you're doing a little bit of evaluation phases of the cycle, but we haven't done any discussion or planning or action yet. We're going to stick on the levels of reflection a little bit here. Getting that deeper reflection and getting a little bit more critical is actually important in order to facilitate change. And so we've got some different levels of reflection. I'm going to get you to look at this journaling exercise. And this is, I put a lot of questions. It's on page 5. It's on the next page there. I put a lot of questions there. It's just questions to cue you. You don't have to answer all of the questions when you're doing journaling, but it was just a way to go through the process of doing a journal entry. Again, what was the event, what happened? That's very superficial. How was I feeling and how was I thinking and what did I do? Again, that's quite superficial. And what did others do? So these are all your observations as to what was going on. Then you're starting to look at the dialogic level of reflection, asking other people, what kind of feedback did I get? What did other people tell me what happened? Or did other people give me feedback on how I behaved or their idea or their concept of what the event was? Then you start thinking about what were the feelings of other people involved? What were they maybe thinking? Or what do I think they were thinking? You could ask them, and why do I think they were thinking that? You know, where it was in the team meeting, the family meeting with a client, were the parents sitting there with their arms crossed like this and looking away? Are you thinking, you might think that they're not listening. I was also visiting with a friend of mine who's an OT in Calgary, and she's got 3 small kids, and one of her daughters is about 7 or 8 years old, and she's never been diagnosed, but she's really active, and you would never think she's ever listening to anything you ever say, because she's always off, whether watching the TV or playing a game or something, and you're telling her things, and you would think that she's not listening. But if you ask her later, she heard everything that you said and took it all in, and it was quite remarkable. So sometimes we need to ask, what were you thinking? What were you seeing? Did you actually hear me? And what were you feeling about that? And then starting to get a little bit deeper, what went well with that situation? And how so? So not just what went well, how did it go well? Why did it go well? What didn't go well? How so? So giving yourself some examples. And what specifically did I learn? So again, we're getting deeper, and you need to be specific about that. I learned that I need to be a better person. That's not specific enough. I learned that I need to be more attentive, or I need to actively listen when somebody's talking to me. That's something very specific that you can learn. And then for OTs, or if it happens to be in an OT situation, how did the situation and my observations relate to the theories of OT practice and understanding of the practice? Looking at what other factors influence the situation, and then again, turning it back. What would I do differently next time? And how specifically will I do this? And one of the, this deeper reflection, the 5 whys, there's a reference for that in your notes. That the 5 whys is a, do you guys know what 6 Sigma is? 6 Sigma is a sort of it's a technique for problem solving, and they use it with risk management. And one of my sisters works at Air Canada Jazz, and she works in the 6 Sigma department. And there's different levels. They learn different methods for problem solving and doing risk management. And the 5 whys comes from that 6 Sigma training. And so it's asking why. So let me see if I can come up with an example. I'm meeting with a client and her husband, and I'm trying to make suggestions. She's been away from work because of depression for quite some time. And this was a number of years ago. It's a real life situation. And I'm going to analyze it right now on the spot, because it was one of those little situations where you go, something's not working right. And so I'm making suggestions to her of things that maybe she could be doing in order to help her, be more engaged in her daily activities. And I'd come back the next week and nothing happened. Nothing happened. So why? Why didn't anything happen? It didn't happen. You can go a number of routes. So if I'm going to analyze it, it didn't happen because she didn't find those activities that I was suggesting meaningful. So eating a healthy, balanced breakfast wasn't meaningful to her. Had I been more observant and looked around her kitchen, I would have known that, because she had pop everywhere. What else? There was sugary cereals. They had cake on the counter. If I had been more observant, I might have noticed that. I thought she should get out and get some exercise. Didn't do it. Why didn't she do it? Because she didn't think it was important. Why didn't she think it was important? She didn't think it was important because that's her family values. Why is that her family values? Who knows? That's what her parents taught her. Or she's influenced by her husband, who also has those same values. Why? And you keep going back and you ask the whys and the whys and the whys. And that helps you to get deep down in there. And it could go a different route. It could be that she wasn't listening because her autistic child was over here and she was paying more attention to him than to me. That could have been the reason. And so, and then you can start to figure out how can I change my behavior to start to break off some of those whys. So if it was the problem, if it was truly that she was paying more attention to her autistic child, then maybe we need to either change our setting or find a different way to do our activity that she can actually focus on what we're doing. If the reason is cultural and her values, then I'm going to have to use. Do you guys know about motivational interviewing? Yeah, it's a technique for working with clients that you don't tell them what to do. You help them to find their own motivation to make change in their lives. And so had I known about motivational interviewing at the time, I might have used some of those techniques to help her identify what she would do in order to start making the changes. Because she did want to get better, she did want to make the changes, but I just couldn't figure out how to help her to do that at the time. I've since learned a lot more about that. So using those 5 whys can help you to really figure out what was the problem there. One of the answers is because I just didn't know how. I didn't know how to get through to help her at that moment. And that's part of us always getting better too. And actually that admitting that I didn't know how is part of that deeper reflection too. And that's, part of that, geez, if I could have gone back, I probably could have helped her. And at the time, as it turned out, we just, with the insurance company, and I said, well, things aren't going to change here. Let's just leave her alone. We couldn't, anyway, and that looking back now, I feel like kicking myself, or embarrassed, some of those words that we had before, embarrassed. Why couldn't I help? you can't help everybody. And so that's another realization that I had too. So using those levels of reflection and using an activity like journaling, and we're not going to do this today, but because I think it's just a little bit too in-depth. But journaling can be either formal, it can be informal. What are some, does anybody here journal already? Anybody at all use it in your own personal life? I see a couple of head nods, yeah. What is it that you like about journaling?
It's a way of expressing or talking without actually talking. Being audience, and actually have to listen.
Yeah, so
Your paper is your listener.
yeah, so your paper is your listener. So she was saying, I'm going to repeat that because the people in the back can't really hear, that writing things down is you can talk about it without actually talking to somebody about it. So your paper is your listener. That's one good thing. What do you like about it? It's an insightful process. How so?
Having to think very linearly about what it is you're trying to process.
Yeah, so
Which gets fragmented.
yeah, so thinking very linearly about it. Also, the activity of writing things down puts our thoughts into actual words rather than just being thoughts. So putting them into actual, real, concrete words helps to really solidify what it is that you're thinking about. It slows you down because the activity of writing makes you slow down, and it helps you to really look at those words in a little bit more critical fashion. Yeah. And we do that too, and it helps you to actually, I think it helps you to see what was really going on. I do this with clients, with people with brain injuries, is the activity of writing helps you to remember it, for one thing. You can also look back at it later so that you can reflect on it again. But the activity of writing it down helps you to, really frame what's going on. And then you can, once what's happened has been written down, then you can start pulling in, well, what was I thinking at the time? And what was I feeling at the time? And it makes it a little bit more concrete and a little bit more methodical, thinking through the process. And so if you're doing journaling, and journaling is really good for students, if you guys if you have students come and work with you, using a journal activity helps them to reflect on their day or their week, to identify what was going on. Because students don't have a whole lot of experience to look at some of the bigger career-defining things that we were talking about, or we've already talked about, but on the day-to-day, right now, today, what happened, or this week, what's happened, journaling can be really helpful for that. It's not going to be for everybody, but sometimes if you've had a critical incident, sitting down and maybe taking, a question sheet like this and going through that, of looking at it and processing it that way can be very helpful. And then going back and reviewing your journal. So I think it's important to date your entries, not just write it down, but date it and keep them, and then go back and look at it again, because it may give you more insights once you've looked at it. The activity of doing the journal starts the reflective process. So once you've started writing it down, and some of the questions, what would I do differently next time, and how specifically will I do it? How am I going to know that I've improved? That's going to trigger you to start being reflective while you're going to reflect in action rather than on action. It will happen, trust me. How many of you guys went to the bathroom? Which way does the toilet paper go? You start to notice these things, right? It's when you start to think about it, and then when you're out there, it's serendipity. It just sort of, these things start popping up all around you, and you start noticing them. Once you start bringing it in and actively being reflective. Yeah. So it's important to go back to, and that cyclical reflection. So you go back and you think about it, and you may change some of your observations, maybe make some other notes in the sidelines, And you may make a new plan by going through that process. Or you may make a whole new journal entry too. So yeah, that's the levels of reflection. And different people are going to be at different levels. I think it takes practice. I was talking with somebody about this before. If you have students coming in who've never ever done this before, have never done journaling or never, actively been reflecting on their days or on their activities, they may not be real good at it. They may be very superficial. I know when I was in university filling out the evaluation forms, it was very superficial. And I probably would do it a lot differently now because I've been practicing. And it's like anything that you do. The more you practice, the better you get at it, and the easier it is if you practice it. Okay, so what matters most is how you see yourself. So far we've just been looking at ourselves, right? There are some dangers in this. This little kitty cat thinks he's a lion because that's what he sees in the mirror. And what do you suppose is going to happen when he goes out and tries to pounce on that alligator? He's going to get eaten because he thinks he's a lion. He's going to get the alligator. Yeah, we have to be careful of that. There's staying within our own heads and within our own thoughts. There's some risks there. We collude with ourselves. We start to, it can go either way. You can make yourself look like a lion, or that lion can make himself look like a kitty. So depending on how you see yourself. So what's important, we can get hung up on that. We need to take it, I think, to getting feedback from other people. And that's part of the education process. We need to get out of ourselves. So I want to do an exercise here where we're going to do a little debate, and compare and contrast two different kinds of reflective activities. One is as a solo person, I like it doing solo, and the other is doing it as a group. We had said before, there's pros and cons to everything. I'm a introvert, and actually on the scale of introvert to extrovert, if this is introvert, I'm probably like right around here somewhere. I don't come across as that because I'm standing up here, but I've practiced this for a while, and I actually like getting up and talking in front of people. I think I said that to you. It's because I'm the boss. I'm in charge when I'm up here. I also really enjoy educating people, so I get a real charge out of that. But at the end of the day, yesterday I got back to the hotel here, and I was in bed by 8 o'clock. That was it. I can be on all day. So moral of that is, I would prefer to be doing my reflecting by myself. I would prefer, because that's where I'm more comfortable, is in my own head and doing things by myself. What I know is that I need to get feedback from other people. So I need to get out and get that from somebody. Often it's my business partner that I'll go and check with. What I'd like to do is we'll go in groups by tables, actually. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's perfect. We've got 8 tables. I'll get you to join one, maybe this table, and you can join this table. But you know all the answers, so. And so we've got pros and cons. I'm going to do 2 tables for each. 2 tables for the pros of for reflecting on your own. 2 tables will do the cons of reflecting on your own. 2 will do the pros of working as a group, and then the other 2 will do we've done the pros of working as a group and the cons of working as a group. There's good and bad for everything. It's going to fit different people's styles. So, and then once we'll take about 10 minutes to do that, and then what I'd like to do is to get the 2 pros together and consolidate their list, 2 cons together, consolidate the list. Just if we tried to do it all together, the groups would just be way too wieldy. So I've got sheets here, and then you're going to come and present it to the group, okay?